the road to Hanover was the direct route from Madison to Lexington. It lay along the riverbank, passing the southern base of Backbone, a long, isolated, vertebrated ridge which still bears the name. At Duffy's upper landing, it left the river and soon commenced its weary climb up the hill. The walk was shady and cool. The trees, principally beech and poplar, were large and stood in their native, unassailed majesty. We walked on, and we found ourselves emerging from the depths of the forest and nearing the village. At the south end of a long, gentle knoll, two more small streams came together, and all Hanover was in view.
My first view of Hanover was by moonlight. I thought it a very uninviting spot, and daylight did not change my impression. The dwellings were plain, few and small. There were no sidewalks, but plenty of stumps, and students were everywhere. When I looked over the village, I felt like offering the prayer, "O Lord, bless this miserable little town."
The road to Hanover was winding and green. The bright summer colors were rich and welcoming. This drive was an excited hello. As the winding road finally straightened, campus finally came into sight. The large brick buildings propped against the green foliage. I instantly knew this would be home. Laughter echoed from those walking through the quad, and there were smiles on everyone's faces, even as they were moving mini fridges on the hottest day of August. Hanover was my dream, patiently waiting to become reality. I could not wait to make Hanover home.
The road to Hanover was unexpectedly exciting. As we drove down the curves of Scenic Drive, I found awe in the eerily similarities to my adventures in Clifty Falls. The point's view on the high river was a stunning one, and I couldn't help but find the beauty in the bends of the river. I didn't know then how much comfort a river could be. For a place I'd sworn not to find home, I found myself at home among the red brick buildings and twisted forest-covered roads. I was willing to accept defeat against my family and start my life here for the next 4 years.
My first day was something else. Not the day I moved in, but after I had gotten settled. There was a tradition that Hanover had. It was called the Hike to the Point. This tradition stemmed back from the first students who came to Hanover. They trekked from the Ohio River to the college. To keep this memory alive, we followed the same road. Though the hike was long, the part I liked the most was the people who I got to hike with. I met my very best friends that day, and as we rounded the last curve coming over the last hill, those brick buildings coming into sight, I knew this is going to be my home away from home for the next 4 years of my life. Now my name is signed in a book, with all the others before and after. And they will follow the same path that I did.
Mary, did you hear? Gladys's son is going to Hanover College.
Oh, why no, I didn't. The beautiful school in Indiana, up on a hill?
Why, yes, it's got plenty of green acreage and handsome red brick buildings, all up to date with all the latest technology.
Hiya, Bobby and Mary. What's got you all so excited?
Hanover College!
Oh, my daughter went to Hanover College. She was able to get a first-rate, distraction-free education there.
Well, I didn't know it was co-ed. They're doing the Lord's work training those young women.
Hopefully one of those ladies will start out as a Hanover student and end up Gladys's daughter-in-law.
I'll look into it for my son.
You should. You won't find such an excellent education at an affordable price anywhere else but
Hanover College!
It was on a Wednesday that a rumor reached Hanover that Dr. McMaster was engaged in a plan to transfer the college to Madison.
The rumor spread quickly through town. I had a nice young lad boarding with me at the time, Charlie, and he came back to the house near to tears, saying that the college was to be closed, and he would have to either quit his studies or move to Madison.
It all occurred during the term break, and many of us were home for Christmas. Suddenly, we didn't know where we'd be studying, where we'd be living, if there would even be a college upon our return.
I heard from Mrs. Crow that all the founders and the trustees were completely in the dark about the move.
I would just as soon have suspected my own family of treachery as to have suspected Dr. McMaster of being secretly engaged in a plan for the destruction of our college.
I was put into the same category with Satan. I refuse to be a party to any personal controversy with Dr. Crow on this or any other subject for that matter. I must, however, refute the misrepresentations that I engaged in any underhand intrigue.
Would I charge Dr. McMaster with being underhanded? Let me put it this way. When did Dr. McMaster conceive of the plan to abandon the college? Did he know at the time that he was acting fraudulently to the board?
How were they to know what Dr. McMaster had planned? Not 2 months before the surrender of the college charter, Professor Anderson, on the advice of Dr. McMaster, had gone to the Synod of Indiana and gave a glowing picture of the college.
Yes, we heard that Professor Anderson elicited a deep interest in Hanover College at the meeting. In particular, he described the location of the college to be especially favorable, free from the vices of cities and large villages.
I suppose our parents were grateful for the isolated situation of the college. They knew we were lodged with respectable people, and as students, we found enough companionship among each other and the people of Hanover.
Yes, as Professor Anderson so aptly stated, Hanover is free from the corrupting influences of grocers, grog shops, and coffee houses. Hanover is so destitute of ardent spirits that the students must go to Madison to wet their whistle. However, we are then informed that there is a university forming in Madison, and part of the professors and part of the students are there.
We were not apprised of our danger until it was too late to make successful opposition.
I visited with Mrs. Crow soon after the trustees met. She said there was no chance to save the Hanover Charter. Dr. McMaster had seen to that.
Over the course of these 9 months, by private letters, orally, and in the columns of a skirtless newspaper, the grossest misrepresentation and abuse of me have been spread over the country, and an individual, who shall remain nameless, has charged me with treachery, that I was party to a plot, a conspiracy, and that I had contrived a sudden and unexpected packing of the Board of Trustees for the vote on the Hanover Charter.
When the time for the board meeting arrived, at the early hour of 10 a.m., all the Madison board members were found in their place. These, together with Dr. McMaster and Professor Anderson, formed a majority of the members present. The doctor calls it a large majority, and perhaps the public will be surprised to hear that this large majority consisted of 8 out of 27 members that at the time composed the board.
What have I to say to all these charges? Why, just what I have always uniformly said to them. Nothing at all.
In vain was a motion made to postpone the decision by a few days. In vain was an appeal made to the benevolence of the Madison members. In vain were they reminded about the ruin that they were about to bring upon a number of widow ladies whose earthly all was invested in Hanover property.
Charlie boarded with me for 75 cents a week, plus a bit extra for the washing. I must say, the children and I all missed his presence at the dinner table, and I dearly missed his 75 cents.
There was nothing for it but to pack our wagons full of books and clothes and make our sad procession to Madison. Professor Sturgis was walking with us. He tried to keep our spirits up with jokes and stories, but most of us boys were thinking of the girls we'd left behind in Hanover. When we got to Madison, we found out that we were forced to lodge in the basement.
After everything that happened, the members of the presbytery felt we must speak out. We decided to publish a resolution, simply stating that we deeply regretted the surrender of the charter of Hanover College, and that we heartily approved the efforts of Dr. Crow to build up again a school of the prophets at South Hanover.
School of the prophets. School of the prophets, forsooth, to those who know the men and their qualifications, literary and theological. This talk about the school of the prophets would simply be ludicrous. It is sanctimonious cant. Besides, every man of common sense will see that this resolution was intended to be an attack upon myself personally.
An attack? I believe that few will see anything in it other than an honest expression of opinion on a subject of great interest to the church.
We simply know of no good reason why the college should be so suddenly abandoned. It was a college that had educated more men than any college in the state. Planted by prayer and watered with tears, we had hoped its president would have taken the highest stand. He did not, and as a presbytery, we felt the need to express our regret.
Some of the good brethren seem to apprehend that there's a great deal of heat and excitement upon this subject. So far as I am concerned, the brethren may dismiss their fears. I will not be heated, and I have nothing more to say on the matter.
After a few short months in Madison, we heard that Dr. Crow had an academy started up again in Hanover. We were asking ourselves whether or not we should return. Were not our best friends found among Hanover people? By March, we packed our books and headed up the hill. When we made it to the top of the hill, we were greeted by a group of young ladies waving white handkerchiefs. Every student was made to feel that he'd come home.
Let's all raise a toast to the brave Professor Tyler and Reverend Priest.
What? Raise a glass to those meddling college folks? The ones trying to take away my liquor.
Let me finish. We'll raise a toast to their brave, failed efforts.
Hear, hear. Quite a show that happened the other night with the votes.
A show? I would call it a circus in that room.
When Klaus stormed out of that meeting, he could barely stand.
I thought Professor Tyler would pop a blood vessel.
And then Klaus came back and started shouting again. Well, let's all be thankful that in our town, at least, we can still raise a glass.
Speak for yourself. I live in Hanover. Not a drop of liquor anywhere.
I see Hanover turning into a ghost town for this.
Well, they have that precious college to look after. Let all the rowdy students leave campus and give Madison some extra money with all the tourism.
Rowdy? Those sober, highly educated students?
Ha! What the poor president wishes.
I can't help but worry about my brother who lives in Hanover. This no liquor nonsense will cause a stir.
You're worried about him going around without a strong drink?
No. I'm concerned about all the people who have to live with him when he doesn't get his booze on a long work night.
Hey,
You're a
Lillian!
Hey, Lillian.
William, we never see you down here. What? Something go wrong in your own town? Had to come down to ours?
No. As you well know, Hanover has now declared, like all of Jefferson County, it will be dry.
So, then what brings you here to our town, to our quaint little bar?
I don't need you patronizing me. I can't stand my husband, and if you think that I can live with him without one drop of liquor, you would be daft. If I must come down to Madison just to get some relief, so be it.
Well, this calls for another round.
Hear, hear. My name is Elias R. Munfort. I was born in Greensburg, Indiana on March 2nd, 1842. I fought for the Union as part of the Ohio Volunteer Militia at 2nd Bull Run, Chancellorsville, and Fredericksburg. I was wounded at Gettysburg. I graduated Hanover College in 1865.
My name is Joseph M. Atkinson, born in Switzerland County, Indiana in 1841. Fought for the Union as a part of the 3rd Indiana Cavalry. Fought at Gettysburg. Was wounded in Sherman's raid near Richmond, Virginia. Never made it to college.
Beverly, Virginia, August 17, 1861. Dear Mother, I am enjoying the best of health. I was weighed on Monday and weighed 153 pounds. I am getting fat. It is very cold in these mountains at night. It is nothing strange to see frost here in the morning. We had a sham battle here the other day. One of the most comical things I've ever saw. Our mess against the sergeant's mess. We had a stovepipe battery, and the sergeant's men had some barrels for guns. They fought for a long time. We took their battery and they took ours. Finally, one man fell down as if he were killed. We raised quite an excitement, and all the officers turned out. Even the colonel took a good laugh at us. I am being called for special duty, and will have to close. Your affectionate son, E. R. Munfort. Love to all. P.S. Please tell Father to send me a little money, as I need some.
Washington, D.C., November 24th, 1863. Dear Sister Molly, your letter of the 15th came to my hand yesterday. I was, as always, glad to get it. Levi is well. Only his ears. He hears very badly. I heard yesterday from Sam. He was well and driving teams of horses. Saw Tom and Alan and 4 or 5 more. They are going home. You will see them soon. Tell Uncle for me to give his students the attention and discipline they need this winter, for they haven't had either for some time. I never believed much in whipping, but I think I should have to do some of that in that school. Tell Jim and Will not to spare the rod. Well, I'd like to step back into sister's school someday when she didn't know I was about to surprise her. I close, hoping this may find you in all of the best of health, the greatest blessing of your life. Your brother, Joseph.
December 1861. Dear Sister, we are now 6 miles from Fredericksburg. We have a very pleasant little camp in the thickest wood you ever saw of pine and oak. As far as our regiment is concerned, we are comfortable. Though the weather is changeable and very disagreeable, yet there are thousands lying on the battlefield of Fredericksburg who suffer more than tongues can tell. And not only those who lay helpless and wounded upon the battlefield undergo those sufferings, but the living too. Those who are in good health, those who are in the front, who have to spend sleepless nights with their guns in their hands, ready at a moment's notice. I would be willing to undergo all of this, if the victory we have in view could be gained. But this, I'm afraid, can never be, or at least it looks precarious at the present time. Remember me to all. Yours affectionately, E. R. Munfort.
November 27th, 1863, Washington, D.C. Dear Brother Irvin, I think this rebellion is almost played out. It will be soon cut in twain, then fall it must. You need give yourself no trouble about my spirit failing. At least when I enlisted, it was with my eyes open, fully aware of the trials that would necessarily have to be borne, and with a firm determination to endure them patiently. It is in the power of man to make himself miserable or happy as he pleases. I will close by wishing you good luck with school and every other aspect. Write often. Your brother, Joseph.
After we parted with you at Cincinnati, we were very busy assisting in loading the camp equipment and getting the men on board. I witnessed a great many very affecting scenes, soldiers parting with their friends, never expecting to see them again. The tears fell thick and fast. At 7 o'clock, a rich table was spread before us. Officers were entitled to cabin passage, a fact which we did not regret, being very hungry. After tea, the lieutenant colonel invited us to indulge in the rich perfumes of some Havana cigars, which we lit. We then walked up on the deck to enjoy the cool breeze of evening. I took a peep at the stars, to see if they looked the same as those that often invite you out to take observations.
January 23rd, 1862. Dear Brother Elias, when you read this, you will probably be on your way to Virginia, and I shall be at home thinking of you. Shall I ever see you again? It may be that you will return, or it may be that God has designed that you shall fall on the battlefield. If this is the will of God, we must submit. And liable as you are to be killed at almost any moment, should you not always be prepared? Are you prepared? I fear not. Do you not think you ought to be? Tomorrow may never come to you. Your life may be over before tomorrow. Oh, then, why not prepare, so that if such be the case, you may be ready to meet God and render a good account of the talents he has committed to your keeping? If I should never meet you again in this world, let me hope that I may meet you in heaven, a ransomed soul. And now, dear brother, I have no more time, and all I wish is that you may do your duty and take care of yourself. Goodbye. Your affectionate sister, Maggie E. Montfort.
May 27th, 1864, Point Lookout, Maryland. My dear father, my wound, which is in the right leg above the knee, is doing tolerably well now. A few days ago it commenced bleeding, the artery being cut by the wound. The doctors took up the artery and tied it, and they now say it is doing well. I am quite weak from the loss of blood. The bone is not broken, and I hope to get along without much difficulty. I have the best of nurses and physicians. Make yourself easy on that score. Send letters to Hammond Hospital, Point Lookout, Ward No. 8, Maryland. Write as soon as you get this. Your affectionate son, J. M. Atkinson.
May 6, 1862. Camp at Shaw's Fork, near Shenandoah Mountain. Dear Sister, the skirmish was between Company D and Company G on our side, and about 1,500 rebels on the other side. The two companies stood their ground nobly. One man had to have his leg amputated. Another received a ball in his breast, passing out under the left arm. The next day, we were drawn up in the line of battle all day. We lost 9 instantly, and several afterwards. 43 were wounded, but the wounded are doing well now. The same night after the fatigue of battle, we were ordered to retreat, and did so all night. It was a terrible march.
May 31st, 1864, Point Lookout, Maryland. My dear father, I had a letter written to you a few days ago. I have written soon after I arrived here on the 16th, but I've had no answer. I write again. My wound is doing first rate, and I am doing very well, and though I may be confined for some time yet, I hope to come out all right. I cannot account for the fact of getting no letter. I do hope you will write at once, and let me hear from you. Send letters to Hammond Hospital, Point Lookout, Maryland. Love to all, your affectionate son, J. M. Atkinson.
June 3rd, 1864, Point Lookout, Maryland. Dear Sir, I wrote a letter a few days ago for your son Joseph, who is in the hospital at this place, and at his request I write to you again. I'm sorry to say that he's not getting along as well as we had hoped he would. On yesterday morning, the wound commenced bleeding, and the nature of the wound was such that the doctors decided that it was necessary to amputate the leg, which was done yesterday about 12 o'clock. He appears to be comfortable. He told me he had received a letter from home and wanted me to answer it. I know it will be sad news, yet it is best you should know it at once. What will be the result in his case? Of course we cannot tell. God only knows. It is but right, however, I should say the doctors think the probabilities are he will not recover. Yours truly, D.D. McGee, Chaplain.
July 5th, 1863. My name is Isaac Montfort. Today, I found my nephew, Elias Montfort, at a temporary hospital about 6 miles from Gettysburg. He was suffering from a gunshot wound in the left thigh. He was in an insensible condition. Attention was called to his case by myself. The wound was believed to be a fatal one, with a bare possibility that with the best skill and nursing, the limb might be saved. There was also but a bare possibility of recovery if the limb was amputated, at or so near the thigh joint. At my earnest solicitation, it was concluded to accept the equal chance for recovery and not amputate.
I did recover. After many surgeries to remove the bullet, pieces of shattered bone, even a 3-inch piece of my sword, I guess it was shattered by the bullet when it hit my leg. By late October, I was able to walk short distances without my crutches, and was even able to ride a horse in November. By 1865, I graduated from Hanover College. I practiced law in Greensburg, Indiana, and Cincinnati, Ohio. I was even appointed postmaster of Cincinnati by President McKinley in 1899. I married, had 3 children, and lived to be 78 years old. You might say I lived a complete life.
June 7th, 1864, Point Lookout, Maryland. Dear Sir, I'm sorry to say that my worst fears have been realized. Your son Joseph died today. I called to see him about a half an hour before he died. he recognized me and spoke to me. I spoke to him about the promises of the Savior and told him in the dying hour he might seek and join the Savior. He whispered, "This is my dying love."
June 15th, 1864. Dear Father and Mother and brothers and sisters, you have no doubt received Chaplain McKee's letter concerning Joseph's death. I reached Point Lookout Saturday night. When I went into the hospital and inquired for Joseph, they told me he had died the Tuesday before. It seemed hard not to find him there, but it must have been harder for him to die there with no friend near him.
I stood by him until he expired and held his hand in mine. I cut a lock of his hair. I sent it with this letter.
His nurses were so kind, and so was the chaplain. But they all see so much suffering and death, and are kept so busy, they can't afford special attention to anyone. As one of the soldiers said to me, no tears are shed here for one who dies. It is a hard place to die.
Joseph Atkinson died yet another victim of this cruel and wicked rebellion.
Brother, glad to hear that you are getting along well with school. Hope that you may continue to have a good time. I am having a soldier's time. And that is a hard time, for soldiering is hard. There are some pleasures in this world, yet they are few here. But it is not for the pleasures that we are here, but for the country.
Hear ye, all ye yearlings, the upperclassmen of Hanover College, though it gives them much pain and sorrow, though moved in deepest sympathy for you because of what you now face, and though a great many other things, they are forced, even compelled by their iron hand of their consciences, to decree that the freshman class of 1916 wear green caps.
There are many and diversified reasons why the freshmen should wear green, but two main reasons are as follows. He should wear a green cap on his head because the cap and the head will harmonize beautifully. Moreover, it is the purpose and solemn intent of this institution, namely Hanover College, to develop cool-headed citizens. There is no way to become cool-headed with less exertion than by wearing one of these green sky pieces.
Green is a popular color. Of that, there is little doubt. Green is a beautiful color. Of that, there is less doubt. Green is the most appropriate color for a freshman to wear. Of that, there is no doubt.
Really, it's astonishing how greatly they add to one's personal appearance. They make one look like a different person. Freshmen should not have too much on their brains, thus another advantage of green caps.
If any freshman is in doubt, he can acquire all desired information by asking a sophomore.
Today was December 7th, 1941. Albert and I were having dinner at Cravenhurst, a lovely little inn above Madison. I had just skewered a potato with my fork when two gentlemen burst in through the front door of the dining room. Both men had a curious look of remorse and fear painted on their faces. One of them looked at us and then at his friend. He opened his mouth. "The Japanese have bombed Pearl Harbor. We're under attack," he said. They turned and left. The inn fell silent. I looked at Albert, and we soon followed. When we arrived home, we cloistered ourselves around our radio, only leaving to collect refreshments and address letters as we listened. The broadcaster informed us that we were mobilizing for war. Soon, millions of men would see the front lines, and even fewer would return home. With a click, we turned off the radio and made for bed with prayers in our hearts and anxieties in our heads. I often wonder if maybe our fears came to life that night. Maybe it was coincidence? Why does crisis strike where we are most comfortable? Nobody knows for sure who first saw the fire, but at 2:30 that morning, Alta Brown was the first to act.
Number, please.
There's a fire in Classic Hall. Fire in Classic Hall. Fire!
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure. Look at your window if you don't believe me. You'll see it.
Alta didn't have to look. She always took these things very seriously. 3 calls of the siren. That was a signal for a fire east of the Beta House.
No, it's Classic Hall. Classic Hall. Classic Hall.
Alta, are you seeing this?
The fire was visible from all corners of campus, the flames licking high into the sky. Max Poland, who lived 2 houses down from the firehouse, got to the fire engine first. Bob Panzer drove his terraplane car to the president's house, thinking it was our home that was ablaze. Thankfully, we were safe. Bob picked up a student and headed towards Classic Hall to assist in any way that they could. Mr. Wickwire arrived at the scene as the engine's fire hose was connected to the hydrant near Hendricks Hall. He and others unrolled it with haste. It looked like a great serpent slithering towards a flame. Soon, 6 great streams of water bore down on the blaze. The water enticed the flame to dance through the building. The inferno raced through the many corridors of Classic Hall. You could hear the wood timbers creaking with the great weight of it. Fraternity brothers woke their brothers. Sorority sisters woke their sisters. People continued to swarm the site. The whole community must have been there.
Where's Anthony and Mark? Are they still inside?
A few boys lived in the basement of Classic Hall. They tended the furnaces and did odd jobs for the college. Albert was the next to wake.
Oh no, it's all going. Catherine, wake the kids.
The cupola of the building hadn't fallen yet, but the fire was determined to make it happen. Don Waters was a ladder man, up to the 2nd floor to his office. Grant Wickwire followed him, carrying hoses and surveying the situation. Bob Panzer braved the basement to retrieve ladders and boards to help salvage what they could. By the time the fire had been discovered, it had consumed the western side of the center of the building. The brick walls created the perfect flue, and the well-oiled wooden floors exploded with flame as it spread. The fire traveled up the spine of the building, across the roof, and to the chapel. The cupola fell in at last, the long, drawn-out breaking, like a tree falling in a forest. The big old bell fell with a loud crash. I was standing with Albert when we heard another heavy sound.
That must be the organ, probably. I would think that it would fall through to the basement.
That sound punctuated the air. Nobody talked much after that. Occasionally, Albert would mutter to himself.
I don't know what we'll do. I just don't know.
Everything was under control by 5:30 a.m. Everything that we could save had been salvaged. The wings of the building were intact, but barely, damaged by smoke and water. Only the walls of the center section remained standing.
Well, not much more we can do here. We might as well go.
We passed the Cuteses and Jean Anderson on the way home.
Come on over and get some coffee. Bring anybody else you see along.
We turned on the lights in the living room, and Albert lighted a fire in the fireplace. Ironic that we still needed fire after what had just happened. This fire seemed content to remain in its hearth. We were a tired-looking lot, our faces gray with weariness and lined with the strain of loss. At 7:30 a.m., we went over to the Donner Hall dining room. Everybody was up for breakfast, which showed that there had been a crisis the night before. Ed Luders played the piano, which wasn't his custom at breakfast. The kitchen help was in a dither, gathering extra food for the tables. After eating, Albert addressed the crowd.
The fire in Classic Hall is a great loss to the college, but a building is not a college, and a fire does not end the college life. We are grateful for all the help you gave in putting out the fire and in saving what could be saved. It is very fortunate that the fire came before you went on vacation. While you are gone, we will make the necessary arrangements, and classes will begin as scheduled at 8 o'clock on January 5th. We hope you have a good vacation. If anybody you know wants to help rebuild Classic Hall, take that money and send it to the college. I guess that is all.
Albert was right. That was all. We were witnessing the end to an era at Hanover College, but we were also entering a new era in United States history. Some of our students would be drafted into the war. Some would never return home. And others would continue on as we rebuilt here on the hill.
Pep.
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 Pep. This is a word most often used at a ball game or some display of athletic ability. But may we not apply the term to the last 3 weeks of school?
To the last year of school.
Professors and students are worn to the breaking point. Classes drag, students become a bore, life a burden, and to some it is quite a struggle to stick to it until the end. Relations become strained, and on almost every face is the forced smile.
Is that masked smile.
The forced smile that much resembles that of the Cheshire cat.
That masked smile that everyone wishes to see.
If ever we need pep, it is now.
We need pep now.
Not the kind that gets behind the bleachers and knocks, but pep that stands as near the field as possible and urges and applauds every play. As students, our interests have lagged.
As students, our interests have been put on hold for safety.
We have all year worked and played with a vim.
And social distancing.
And now, with only the last of the last inning to play, we have all but given up. The professors make the assignments.
And the students do the assignments.
With such a lack of enthusiasm and such a mechanical attitude that we have lost the individual interest manifested in the early part of the term. The war,
This pandemic,
has had much to do with this fatigue. We have been constantly stirred by the editorials of the papers,
News outlets.
chapel talks,
Social media.
news items, and telegrams of the past month.
federal, state, local, and school guidelines,
And the ever-present risk of being quarantined.
And it has upset the usual uniformity with which our school has been conducted. What we need most is to do as the coach tells the boys.
And girls.
Before a hard game, pep up, fellows,
and folks.
and show your mettle. It is really quite hard to keep steadily on when we know the world about us is in the tumult of war.
In the midst of the pandemic.
And we want to be doing our bit. With June 13 as a goalpost, let us do our best to put the play across.
A little bit earlier, we had one for the southern Indiana counties along the river up through Madison. What is the situation there?
Well, we had a big cell that went up across Harrison County. We had 6 reports of tornadoes from Harrison County about an hour ago. That moved on northward into Indiana. We had a number of reports of tornadoes over there.
The radio had broadcast tornado warnings throughout the day, which isn't unusual during the spring season in southern Indiana. Throughout the day, the storm strengthened around us. The weather was terrible, with torrential rains and very dark skies.
My friend Gary came and knocked on my door around 3:15. He wanted to know if I wanted to go on a run with him. We're both track runners, so we decided to head out, and then we made it about halfway through. The rain's getting really heavy, so we decided to turn back around, come back to campus, and do sprints on the track.
The siren at the local fire station wailed all day, and the winds increased drastically. Students, faculty, and office workers automatically glanced out their windows. Many sensed it, others saw it. Tornado.
As we rounded the curve, I looked to the west and saw it, a funnel, just as it touched down, stirring up a cloud of dust, smoke, and wood. Tornado.
I was in the library. I stepped outside and heard the rumbling. Tornado.
The funnel was moving quickly, and with our house over 300 yards away, I was certain George and I couldn't make it back in time. I remember a deep ditch that ran parallel to the tennis courts and tracks, so we quickly dashed over to it, crawled in so that we could lay flat, and held onto a metal post sticking out of the ground. As we lay there, I felt George move. I lifted my head to see him standing up. His face was frozen, half in fear, half in awe, as he silently mouthed, "Look at it." Suddenly, he took off running.
I don't know what came over me, but I started running, chasing the spiraling force. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see Gary. He was yelling, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. The rumble of the tornado was overwhelming. Finally, Gary reached me and yelled at me to get in, pointing to a large washout with a water main running through it. We crawled in, our faces pushed down to the mud, one hand holding onto the water main, the other trying to shield our heads as much as possible.
After the tornado moved through the town of Hanover, the destruction came to our campus. The old Beta Theta house was destroyed. The new Kappa Alpha Theta house's roof was peeled like an orange. The Phi Mu's house's floor and roof ripped away. All their beds, luggage, and clothing were tossed and scattered for blocks.
I could hear the sounds of metal scrapping and the sound of metal posts snapping, the stadium fencing collapsing like dominoes.
I could feel the wind getting stronger, and I looked up to see what was happening. Directly above my head, a large whirl of fragments, spinning effortlessly in a strange combination of grace and chaos.
The college water tower collapsed, dumping thousands of gallons of water on the already battered athletic fields. The cupola at Donner Hall fell to the ground, and the copper roofing sprayed like shrapnel from all of the buildings.
We watched open-mouthed as the funnel with its whipping tail ignited explosions of brown smoke and large splintered fragments. It contained down the streets of town, resembling an old-fashioned steam engine, churning up huge billows of smoke while following its uncharted course. As it continued along, its next stop became clear, the trailer court.
He didn't have to say anything. His face reflected the agony of the disaster. No trailer was left untouched. They crumpled like tinfoil, twisted, and overturned one end over the other. We hurried to offer help.
A van with the local service station's logo on it rushed down the road towards the trailer, screeching to a halt in front of one of the overturned trailers. The driver jumped out, and he immediately started digging through the pile, which moments before had been his home. Screaming the name of his child, a neighbor appeared with his daughter, reassuring him she was all right, but said the lady who lived in the last trailer wasn't as lucky.
As 6 men dug through the rubble, they pulled her body from beneath the trailer. A young lady, watched in horror, dropping to her knees and shielding her face, sobbing, "That's all we had! That's everything! That's everything!" I returned to my house, the windows busted out by the tree limb that now reached into my room. My clock had stopped. It was 3:52 p.m.
Faculty homes were in the direct path of the funnel. Their roofs were lifted and now rest throughout Happy Valley.
All the buildings. Classic Hall.
Parker Auditorium.
Lynn Hall.
The new library.
Crow Hall.
Are devastated. Shards of glass sparkle on every surface of every building.
In spite of the extensive structural damage, the most shocking sight on campus is the devastation of the trees.
The trees, whose shade and beauty we've loved for years, became deadly projectiles driven through homes,
Classroom buildings,
and automobiles.
Splintered like twigs.
Parker was now visible from the college's entrance, where before all that could be seen were lofty treetops.
the trees that for over 100 years have made our campus
Our home.
a showplace of beauty. They're gone.
The land is ravaged.
naked.
And bare.
Last night, we gathered on the quad, and President Horner spoke to all of us. He encouraged us to stay strong, help our campus recover, and, if possible, ask our friends and family to donate to the cost of repairs.
The insurance would cover the buildings, but not the natural beauty of our campus.
Hundreds of trees, grown for hundreds of years, would have to be removed, and with new ones planted in their place. The restoration of campus could cost upward of $1 million.
And while we're certain windows and roofs can be repaired, the landscape and beauty of our campus won't be as lucky.
Dear Sir, enclosed is a check for $15 for your tree restoration fund, or whatever name you use, in memory of my friend, Mrs. Ethel Ware.
Dr. Horner, as a Hanover alumni of the proud class of 1955, I would like to extend a gift of a tree from our nursery to aid in the beautification of campus.
Dr. Horner, it is our desire for a tree to be planted in the memory of our daughter, Patricia.
Dear Sir, enclosed is a check for $25 for your Hanover College Emergency Fund. It's in memory of my sister, Marjorie. I hope your goal is accomplished soon. My wife and I thought Hanover College campus was so lovely, and we'd like to see it that way again soon.
Dear Dr. Horner, I can't tell you how happy I am to contribute a tree to Hanover. My mother loved Hanover so much, and now when I see that tree next year, it'll be like a part of her is with me. Thank you.
My father planted a cedar of Lebanon some years ago near the small chapel. It was a source of great pride for him, and every time we were in town, he would take us out to the campus to see his tree. The tornado in April cut it off a few inches above ground level. I'm wondering if you can use my donation to plant another cedar of Lebanon, which could be planted in the place of the one destroyed. It would mean more to my father than almost anything I can think of. It was kind of visible, living mark which he was leaving to a campus that has meant so much to him for nearly 60 years.
Dear Sir, I received your letter regarding help for Hanover College. I am a widow with low income. I could not give money, but I have some young maple and some other trees you could set out. I am 80 years of age and do not get out and look around much, but anyone could come and look at them and see. I am interested in the college and its success. Both of my daughters went there.
Jack, I got your request for trees.
Dr. Horner enclosed as my check. For
We
the
always
trees.
loved your
We'll be
campus,
sending 4
and we
dozen
want to see
trees
your
your way
beautiful
Let us know
again.
what you need. We're ready.
The
with
trees will
shovels
grow
in
and
hand.
restore the
I
campus.
sent in
I
$30
can't wait to
for
see
the
you
trees.
We want to
again.
support you in your
No,
efforts
we're
to
We're
restore
sending
the
some money
trees.
back
trees.
for your son and
The
Megan
trees.
Mercy.
The
We've
trees.
always
The
loved your
Beautiful
campus so
with
much.
all
The
The
trees.
trees. The road leaving Hanover was winding and green, but this time it was different. Something inside of me was shifting. This drive is bittersweet.
In the final days of my life at Hanover, I'm feeling every emotion possible. The wait for the end, but also the beginning of something unknown to me. The future.
It is a bittersweet moment for me as I pack up the last of my belongings and say goodbye to my home of the last 4 years.
Although I had my fair share of sweet and bitter days, I feel strongly that this was a learning experience for the life that lays ahead of me.
Leaving this place is like shutting an old, nostalgic book and picking up a heavy new one with a blank cover. This place that has been another home to me is saying goodbye, and the push out isn't as easy as I had hoped, but I'm ready to walk on my own.
With a melancholy taste, I bid farewell to those who I had grown close with. My friends I called sisters, and the professors who became like my family.
They said make Hanover home, but they never told us how hard it would be to say goodbye.